My parents' golden girl, my sister, fired me. I walked into that boardroom expecting a Monday review. Instead, I got applause. For her. She took the company I helped save, then said my services were no longer needed. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because 4 years ago, when everything was on the line, I wired $600,000 to keep it alive. And the clause tied to that money? They forgot it still held. She thought she'd won. But I still held the one signature that could end it all. And I used it. Hi, I'm Aurelia Rydell. I never wanted to be the face of a family scandal. But when they erased my name from the company I helped build, I didn't disappear. I documented. I prepared. And when the time was right, I made sure the silence ended with my voice. What they took from me wasn't just a job. It was legacy, memory, identity. So if you've ever been cut off, replaced, or underestimated, stay with me. This story might feel closer than you expect. And before we begin, tell me, have you ever had to smile through betrayal? Drop A if you're listening at night, or A if you're holding something they thought you forgot. I was on time. They were early, with my ending already rehearsed. Monday mornings at Rydell and Licht were supposed to be quiet. Aurelia's heels tapped evenly on the polished floor as she stepped into the marble lobby. Tall windows, the scent of bergamot and old decisions in the air. The receptionist smiled. Tight. Off. Something in that smile made Aurelia's stomach shift. She pushed open the boardroom doors and froze. Gold and white balloons. A congratulatory banner. Cupcakes. Champagne flutes. On a Monday. Her father was already standing at the head of the table, shoulders squared, voice rich with ceremony. Today marks a new chapter in our legacy. We are proud to announce the appointment of Selena Rydell as our new CEO. Applause erupted. Not polite, not uncertain. Planned. Aurelia didn't move. She didn't clap. Her arms hung at her sides, heart stiff and stunned. Like a vase no one remembered to move before the earthquake hit. Selena stepped forward, radiant in cream, her hair slicked back like a crown. "We're streamlining leadership," she said smoothly. "It's time to move forward with clarity." A nod to HR. A paper. A name in bold. Aurelia Rydell. Termination notice. The breath caught in her chest like something lodged wrong. She looked at her parents. Her father adjusted his glasses. Her mother looked at her nails. No one met her eyes. "This isn't personal," Selena whispered as she passed. "You've just outlived your role." Aurelia stood still, holding the paper, the applause swelling again behind her like a storm she wasn't allowed to see. No one stopped her when she walked out. No one called her name. Her badge didn't beep at the elevator. A junior associate, someone Aurelia once mentored, passed her carrying a box. Inside, a framed photo from the company's first gala, her boss lady mug, a pen engraved with her initials, like a goodbye she'd never been invited to. And somewhere behind the glass walls, her sister was smiling. They packed up my presence like it had never mattered. The train ride home from the Rydell and Licht Tower blurred into a mosaic of glass and gray. Aurelia sat still, the termination letter folded twice in her bag, untouched. Her fingers, though, couldn't stop replaying how the paper had felt. Too crisp, too final. She had walked out of that building with her chin up, but the silence hit her the moment she stepped through her apartment door. No clatter of keys, no humming kettle. Just a box of her past sitting on the table, taped shut with brittle resolve. She didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she moved to the kitchen, made coffee she wouldn't drink, stood still in the doorway for too long, watching the light shift on the hardwood. Her phone buzzed twice. She didn't check. It was almost afternoon. She finally reached for the box, slid the tape back. Inside, the mug her team gave her on her 35th birthday. The gala photo, her in navy blue, her sister in champagne silk. And the pen, the walnut pen, the one her father gave her when she signed the company's first ESG charter. "You're the future of this name," he had said then. Not Selena, her. She turned the pen slowly in her hand, thumb grazing the engraved letters, AR. She hadn't used it in years. But today, the weight of it anchored her. The pen was warm, the coffee cold. At the bottom of the box, beneath a layer of bubble wrap, something stopped her hand. A plain white envelope. No logo. No stamp. Just her name. Aurelia. Written in careful, deliberate script. She sat down. It wasn't from HR. It wasn't from her parents. It was from someone who still knew what was fair. Inside, one sheet of thick paper, folded neatly. She unfolded it slowly, her heart tightening with every crease. And then she saw it. The clause, signed by Selena, countersigned by their internal counsel. Aurelia stared. This wasn't just a goodbye. This was a reminder. A signature she never revoked. A contract they never bothered to cancel. They had fired her from the company, but not from the power she had helped write into its bones. They thought I'd forgotten. I thought I had too, until the silence gave it back. Aurelia didn't sleep that night. The envelope lay open on the table, its contents smoothed flat like something sacred. The clause was there, in black ink and embossed header. 10% permanent stake, with veto power over CEO succession. Valid unless revoked in writing. She had never revoked it. Selena had never asked her to. The next morning, with a clarity that felt almost mechanical, Aurelia pulled down the storage boxes stacked in her hallway closet, the ones she'd meant to sort through after Q1, or maybe after the audit. Her hands moved on memory. File tabs marked 2019, 2020, Rettungskapital. There, a flash drive taped inside the spine of a manila folder. She'd labeled it in ballpoint pen, Sonderfinanzierung, vertraulich. She plugged it into her laptop. A voice memo. Selena's voice, slightly hoarse from crying. "I don't know how to thank you, Ree. You saved us. If I ever forget this, I don't deserve to lead anything, let alone this family." Aurelia didn't blink, didn't rewind, just hit save. She opened another folder, one from the night she drove to Wiesbaden to meet their lawyer in a midnight storm, still in her office clothes, with a printed wire receipt in her coat pocket. $600,000. From her personal savings, no press release, no family dinner, just a tired nod from her father and a dry, "It had to be done." She had called off her engagement that same month. Later, she'd told Jan. There had never been a later. In the folder, she found internal memos, signed by her, budget drafts, strategic plans. Everything Selena had used to build her public image had begun as a spreadsheet on Aurelia's laptop. They thought they'd written her out, but the bones of the company, they still bore her initials. She sat back, breath steady, gaze sharpening. This wasn't pain anymore, it was positioning. If they'd looked closer, they'd have seen I never truly left. Aurelia sat at the same kitchen table where she'd once signed the emergency loan forms, when $600,000 of her own savings had bought the company time and Selena a second chance. Now it was buying her something else, control. She clipped the voice memo, scanned the documents, labeled each folder with a quiet precision that only those who've been underestimated learn to master. She wasn't just collecting evidence, she was rebuilding memory. That evening, she drove to a small notary office tucked between a bakery and a language school in West End. No PR firm, no press, just a woman in a gray wool cardigan who verified documents and pressed seals with quiet authority. By the time Aurelia stepped out into the fading afternoon light, she held in her bag a complete file, a notarized copy of the original clause, a certified history of wire transfers, a printed transcript of Selena's voice memo, a scanned record of board approval procedures, showing no legal revocation of her voting rights. She didn't go home. Instead, she walked into the legal department of Riedel and Licht the next morning unannounced, not to confront, to file. She placed the sealed envelope on the desk of Herr Braun, the firm's compliance officer, and said only this: "You're going to want to read this before the next board session." Then she turned and left. No speech, no accusation, just the sound of her heels, familiar, steady, against the company's marble floors. By noon, a memo had quietly circulated to the executive team. By evening, the CEO's discretionary account had been flagged for compliance review, and Selena, who had smiled so widely at that podium just days before, now stood in a private meeting room, rereading her own signature beneath a clause she'd once begged for. Aurelia didn't need to be in the room. She already was, in every email trail, in every overlooked file, in every clause they never thought she'd keep. The difference now? They knew she hadn't forgotten, and they'd just remembered who wrote the foundation they tried to bury her under. Some battles are won before the enemy realizes a war was declared. The following week, Aurelia received no emails, no calls, just a silence so loud it throbbed, until Friday morning. A formal envelope arrived, hand-delivered, bearing the Riedel and Licht seal. Inside, a revised board calendar and a legal footnote. Due to recent compliance findings, the CEO's authority is under internal review. Voting procedures are suspended pending legal resolution. She read it twice, then once more. They weren't asking for her opinion. They were acknowledging her position.
Still, she made no announcement, no LinkedIn post, no quiet leaks to the press. Instead, she put on a charcoal blazer, tucked the certified folder under her arm, and made her way to the old Alte Oper, where the firm was hosting its anniversary gala. Selena was already there, center stage, bright smile, designer dress that shimmered under the chandeliers. Everything about her said untouchable. Until Aurelia stepped into the room. The shift was subtle. Eyes turned, a few whispers. One executive's champagne flute stopped midair. Selena's smile twitched. She stepped down from the stage, heels sharp against polished wood. "You're not on the guest list," she said, low and tight. "Neither was that termination clause," Aurelia answered, softer. Selena tried again, this time with fire. "You think this little paper war wins you something?" Aurelia didn't flinch. She simply stepped aside and handed the sealed folder to the event's legal counsel. No drama, no declaration. But Selena saw it. The clause, the timestamp, her own signature. Her expression froze. "You don't understand what you've started." "No," Aurelia said quietly. "You don't understand what I never stopped knowing." In the hours that followed, executive access was suspended. Financial transfers halted. Media contacts notified to delay all PR releases pending internal clarification. Aurelia didn't stay to watch Selena unravel. She didn't need to. She had already done what she came to do, and for the first time in years, she walked away, not in retreat, but in return. "I didn't take the company back. I took back the part of me that let it define my worth." Aurelia didn't return to the office. There was no need. By Monday, her name had reappeared in the internal systems, not as an employee, but as a permanent stakeholder with veto rights officially reinstated. Not with fanfare, not with apology, just restored, as if she'd never been erased. She opened the company intranet. Selena's profile was still there, but a small gray line had appeared beneath it. Authority status, suspended pending legal resolution. Aurelia stared at the screen, then closed her laptop. Not out of satisfaction, out of closure. That afternoon, she visited the Community Trust Office, the place where their mother used to file the Family Foundation's quarterly reports. Behind the counter stood a young administrator who smiled and asked, "Frau Riedel, do you need assistance?" Aurelia shook her head. "I'm just here to update access on a few legacy files." She placed the updated documents, revocation of Selena's authority, reinstatement of her oversight, into the archive system. No headlines, no meeting rooms, just clean, documented correction. Later, back at her flat, she poured a glass of still water, not wine, set her phone to silent, and opened the drawer in the hallway, the one Selena claimed was lost in the last office move. Inside, wrapped in old audit sheets, lay the original ledger. Not a photocopy, not a PDF. The ledger her grandfather had started when Riedel and Licht was just a name on butcher paper and borrowed capital. Her own annotations were still there. Ink slightly faded, margins filled with corrections, projections, dreams. She traced the spine with her thumb, feeling the fabric wear that had once stained her fingers during late-night number runs. She didn't cry, she didn't speak, she simply placed a slim metal plate on the inside cover. One she'd had engraved the week before. For the one who stayed, even when they stopped looking. And then she closed the book. Not out of grief, but because it no longer needed to stay open to prove she was there. If you've ever been replaced, erased, or told you were too quiet to matter, this story was for you. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever walked away not because you lost, but because you finally knew your worth? Leave a comment with the word growth if you've grown through silence, or type locked if you're still holding something powerful no one else sees. Your story matters too.